Millichap back in 2008, specializing in Brooklyn. The firm has since expanded to a total of 50 brokers. And out of the 50 brokers that work there, one of the things that differentiates us is now there's 11 partners at the firm. So 6 senior associates that were just agents at the company have now been awarded with an equity stake in the firm and are part owners of the company. Since kind of the roots in Brooklyn, we've expanded to Queens, Bronx, Manhattan, and most recently we opened an office in Jersey City, expanding to the Jersey market. So before I get into kind of more specifics, about the company, I guess I'd kind of like to just open it up for some initial questions, if there are any. What you guys are kind of interested in commercial real estate as it potentially relates to brokerage. Does anyone want to start? Have any questions? Anything that I should definitely be covering today?
What was your path to becoming a broker? And was it unconventional, or did you follow a similar path that we might be on right now?
Excellent questions. He asked, what was my path to kind of becoming a broker and getting involved in the commercial real estate industry. When I was in school, I studied sociology and psychology. I went to school down south, Loyola University, New Orleans. I had no idea that I was going to be in commercial real estate. I really didn't think about it at all. My dad always had this line where it takes money to make money. And I didn't grow up with a kind of rich family investing in real estate, so it was just never something that kind of occurred to me that I could pursue. And then I had a few different experiences, like while I was in college, being kind of entrepreneurial. I started my own small bicycle repair business, and I just had this experience of like, the more work I put into something, the more I put flyers around campus or stapled my business card, the more calls I would get and the more money I would make. And if I slacked off and I didn't put up those flyers, my bank account would go low. I'd have no one else to blame or point the finger at but me. So I had that experience of what I put into something I was getting out. And then I graduated college, I moved back home. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was on Craigslist on the miscellaneous job section, not even in the real estate section. And there was something that said, be your own boss, control your own destiny, make unlimited commissions. And I was like, what the heck is this? So I click it, and then there's a picture of a home and people shaking hands and I'm holding the key, little cheesy picture. And then it just clicked, oh, maybe I can do real estate and start off as an agent. So I started off in residential real estate, working for a firm in Brooklyn, running around trying to rent apartments to people. I was wildly unsuccessful in my residential venture. In my first year in the business, I worked every single day. I didn't take off weekends. I made $600. I was like, what the hell am I doing here? Something's not right. So I ended up joining a fancier company in Manhattan that essentially did the same thing, apartment rentals throughout Manhattan. And in my second year in the business there, I made a whopping $6,000. Still working every single day, not taking off any weekends, but just not connecting with my clients. I felt like I reeked of desperation. I wasn't adding any value to them. And in 2 years, I made a total of $6,600, and I thought, maybe I'm not a broker. I'm not pushy enough, I'm not a salesperson. Maybe I need to think about something else. But I had the opportunity of interviewing for a commercial real estate firm, Marcus & Millichap, where they said, Zach, you have the skills to be an agent, you're just following the wrong blueprint. You're chasing everybody who wants something everywhere, who wants to do something right now. So it's a great way to feel busy and go on a bunch of meetings, but I wasn't closing any deals. And it was like I was chasing a ball downhill. I was running faster and faster and faster, but I was never getting anywhere closer to doing any transactions. At the commercial real estate firm, Marcus & Millichap, where I started, they gave me the blueprint. And they said, become an expert in one particular market, one particular asset class, where you can really add value to people and try to make as many like relationships as you can with people who already own the buildings, that aren't telling you that they want to buy them. They already own them. They'll tell you that they're not selling today, but they're thinking about it, so they're willing to meet with you. And these are the clients that you can like exert some influence over and build a relationship. And in that first year in the commercial real estate firm, I was able to make $35,000. My second year, I made 70. In years 3, 4, and after, it was 130, 140 plus. So it took time for me to really kind of build that business. But as soon as I started working in a commercial real estate firm where I had this blueprint of trying to build relationships with owners before they're actively looking to do something, that's when I was really able to kind of build some traction and kind of establish my career. So and I guess that was a good long way to answer the question of how I kind of got into it. But again, commercial real estate was nothing I grew up around, but I liked sales. I liked running my own business. And that's the kind of first thing I tell people when they are talking to me about IPRG is I tell them, like, this is not a job. This is not a 9 to 5. You don't work for IPRG, but you're starting your own commercial real estate business. You work for yourself, and you have the opportunity to do this with us. So IPRG should really be seen more as a partner, less so than an employer. Any other questions before I go a little deeper?
For like me personally, like I'm currently working some sort of like sales job, like at a wealth management shop, and I do have to do like a lot of cold calling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What type of advice could you give, and like what, in your opinion, has worked the best when you're trying to like get sales and like build more meaningful connections with people?
So as it relates to cold calling, and as you said, like building relationships with people, and it's whether you're selling commercial real estate, wealth management, or any other type of sale. My advice, I think what you're really trying to do when you're trying to connect with a stranger is to trigger reciprocity. And in order to do that, like you want to find something interesting that you know, information that you are aware of, and share that with someone. So when we kind of break down the structure of cold calling in our training platform at IPRG, the first thing we talk about is an interest generator. How can I spark a conversation with this person? And one example was, I reached this woman. She'd owned her building for like 50 years. She was getting cold calls and real estate calls all day long. I said, hey, this is Zach Golub. I work with IPRG. And she was like, no, I'm not interested. Just another real estate call, I'm not interested. And I was able to say, hey, 3015 49th Street is a building we just sold for 1.6 million. And then before she clicks the phone, she's like, wait a minute. I'm 3017 49th Street. Like, that's my neighbor's building. And then I had a conversation with her. I was able to like offer her something, because nobody just wants these calls where like they feel like you're digging in their pocket. So start the call by sharing with them some information that they weren't able to get on the newspaper. They didn't get it on Instagram. Some other bit of market information that you have a hunch they'll be interested in. So that's the idea, to start sharing some information about things you're aware of before calling them and saying, hey, I see you own this building, like, are you interested in selling it? Like, that's the surefire way to like get them to hang up on you as soon as possible. But if you're sharing information about the market around them, then you might trigger them to say, hey, I own this building not too far away from there. If that building sold for that, what do you think mine is worth? And when you hear that, like that you've got their wheels spinning, that's when you can try to go for a soft close and like really get in front of them. That's one of the things about commercial real estate that I really enjoy, is that like you're never just gonna do these sales like over the phone. They're not just gonna be some name. You're gonna put a face to the name, build a relationship with them. This is their largest investment. And you're just using the phone as a bridge to kind of graduate that relationship from being a stranger over the phone to someone who shakes their hand and can kind of share more information with them.
Like you said, what do you think of competition in business? How much does it impact you?
You said competition?
Yes.
Competition is great. It shows you that like you're going after something that other people want to be going after too. So if you're calling in a market or you're going after some properties where there's zero competition, then there's likely a reason, you know, those properties aren't trading for enough money to someone to kind of build a business over. So I embrace competition. It lets me know that I'm going after something that's, you know, worthwhile. And I love competing for business because I want to show that owner, you know, how and why they should hire me instead of any other person. And again, that kind of comes back to specialization. So in my career, like I sold buildings in Astoria, Queens, Astoria, Long Island City, Sunnyside, Woodside. That was like my focus market where I wasn't selling buildings in Brooklyn. I wasn't selling anything in Manhattan. I couldn't tell you anything about that. But I could tell you like the average price per square foot, the cap rate, the price per unit of all the buildings that were selling in Astoria, and like make a strong impression upon someone in a short period of time. Again, there's hundreds of thousands of real estate agents. There's a lot of people that are going after your same clients that you're focused on. How you can differentiate yourself is by being hyper-focused, like just selling rent stabilized, multifamily, mixed use apartment buildings in a particular area. That is gonna kind of set you apart and kind of give your clients confidence that like you've been here before, you have a track record, and you know, I should select you over kind of any other broker. So again, specialization I think is a good thing, competition is a good thing, and it kind of helps you carve out like your own value proposition. Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Owner, I specialize in X, Y, and Z in this market, and I don't do anything else but sell these type of properties to try to make you really kind of stand apart from any competition. Any other kind of general basic questions? All right, so I'll kind of get back a little bit to kind of my story in the business, talk just a little bit more about the kind of firm as a whole, and then talk about kind of our training initiatives and our mentorship model that we have at the company. And from there, you know, you should have a pretty good sense of us, but happy to open it up to, you know, more questions before kind of shifting to interest rates. So again, I started in the business 2011. I did residential real estate for 2 years. And then I was at Marcus & Millichap as a senior associate for 9 years selling apartment buildings throughout Queens. So that was my kind of main focus. In my career, I sold over 60 investment properties, and I'm now taking that kind of transactional experience to the role that I currently hold as director with IPRG. So with that experience, I'm running the training and recruitment initiatives. So having, you know, talks like this tonight, meeting, you know, with new potential future agents or people that are just interested in the real estate industry. But my main kind of focus at the company is running the training initiative. So what that looks like on a weekly basis is every Monday morning I host a company-wide sales meeting where everyone in the firm comes in from Derek to the newest hire, and we go over kind of all the inventory, the new listings, the price reductions, buildings that we recently sold, what just went under contract. So everyone in the company has kind of an updated pulse on where the market is and the most up-to-date inventory to then be sharing with their clients on the phone, you know, the rest of that week. Immediately after our sales meeting, we break out into activity review sessions. So this is our weekly kind of accountability check-ins with each other, where IPRG works in kind of different territory models. So different territories, New Jersey being one territory, we have 3 to 4 territories in Brooklyn, 2 in Manhattan, 1 in Queens, 2 in the Bronx. Each one of these territories is its own team. Those teams come into activity review, and then we're looking at the individual agents on that team, kind of their own performance, their own activity from the previous week. So for the individuals, kind of the metrics and things that we're focused on are calls, meetings, proposals. Calls, meetings, proposals. That's the lifeblood of any new agent's business. And at IPRG, we're expecting our agents to maintain an average of 400 plus outbound calls a week, knowing that a majority of those calls are going to be voicemails, wrong number, don't ever call here again. A lot of rejection, But if we can cast that net wide enough, we should leave ourselves with like 50 good conversations each week. Out of those 50 good conversations, we're trying to kind of whittle that down to 2 in-person meetings where, again, we're graduating from the phone to an in-person meeting. And then out of those 2 people that you meet with, you hope one of them is ready to meet with you the following week where you can get back in front of them and share your evaluation. So this is what we'll call the proposal. This is us getting back in front of the client and telling them what we think their building is worth. But more importantly, like, this is our opportunity to really educate the client on why the values are where they are. And then 2, like, demonstrate the firm's capabilities so we're convincing them and, you know, selling them on why IPRG. So after every one of these proposal meetings, we hope that we've really accomplished 2 things. 1, that if this client decides to sell at some point in the future, they're going to want to reciprocate, call us to give us the opportunity to sell the building. And then 2, like, we hope now that they're more quote unquote realistic sellers, that their pricing expectations have kind of been grounded in reality from you kind of sharing comparable sales and everything that's going on the market. So you don't have someone call you up and say, hey Keith, I'm ready to list my building, let's put it on the market for $10 million, and in the back of your mind, like, this thing is only worth 5. So you're building your pipeline, you're educating your clients, and if you can successfully deliver a proposal once a week, at the end of year 1, that's 50 proposals, and by the end of year 2, that's 100 proposals. And once we get 100 seeds planted with owners in our marketplace of multi-million-dollar properties throughout New York and New Jersey, like, we're removing luck, we're removing chance. This is a probability business, and we've kind of stacked the deck in our favor where we have 100 clients that are thinking about selling that look at us as the advisor, and we're kind of ensuring that we're going to be able to build our own book of business kind of from that starting point. But again, that's how this whole opportunity should be perceived, as like you starting your own business. And what is this kind of like bootstrapping period where no, you're not going to be making a lot of money in the first 1 to 2 years, but that you're planting seeds, building relationships. So when these clients are ready, you start getting emails at 11 o'clock at night with the updated rent roll and saying, hey, we're ready to go. What should we list this for? The client listens to you in terms of price. They listen to you in terms of fee. They listen to you when you tell them to reduce the price and to send out the contract. And you're being looked at as much more of like an advisor and a consultant to the client, and not just some transactional tool that is gonna bring them a buyer. So that's a little bit more on kind of expectations of new agents and the training that we're doing on Monday. Now, every Tuesday I host a cold call training session. So agents within the first 12 to 18 months, right now there's about 8 to 9 agents kind of in this track with us at the firm. They come into the main conference room. One of them steps out of the room. They use their phone to make a cold call in to the conference room where everyone else is listening on speakerphone, kind of critiquing and taking notes, and giving these agents like a real opportunity to role play out the scenarios that they're going to encounter every day on the phone, how to overcome common objections, how to stay focused on the purpose of the call, which again is not to sell a building over the phone. It's just to sell yourself as the market expert in this space, where if they're thinking of transacting, they're going to think it's a good idea to meet with you before they do anything. So again, Tuesday, working on our calls to meeting kind of ratio. Then Wednesday, we'll do an additional training where we're doing first meeting role play and proposal presentation practice, where we're again just focused on improving our ratios further down the line. So calls to meetings, meetings to proposals, proposals to listings, listings that'll go under contract, which will represent closed business. Because as we all know, like, real estate is a relationship-driven business, but it should really be seen more as a performance-based business and as a competitive business that we like to say is very similar to sports, where there's going to be a winner, there's going to be a loser, and there will be no second place commission check. So like actors and athletes that get paid to perform, you start thinking of yourself in exactly the same way, constantly practicing, working on your craft, putting in the reps, so when it matters most, you're prepared, confident, and know that you've kind of put yourselves in that position to succeed. So that's the training initiatives, Monday, Tuesday, kind of Wednesday in the morning. Those are for people at the firm in the first 12 to 18 months. But in addition to that, when you're brand new at the firm, your first 8 weeks, we'll go over what we call the IPRG blueprint. So very similar to kind of the initial training that I had early on in my career, where we're going to kind of outline different territories, look at how do you use the Salesforce system to build call lists, underwriting different asset types, multifamily, mixed use, development, retail, and just like all the skills and resources that you'll need for a long career in the business, like we'll teach you all of that in your first 8 weeks so you can really kind of get up and running sooner rather than later. And what I also like to say is that where a lot of your learning is really going to take place is kind of in the field with your team and with your senior mentor. So as I mentioned before, there's 11 senior partners at the firm, the owners of the company. Each one of these partners is a lead of one of these territories or divisions. So we have kind of conversations with incoming agents, understand what areas and kind of personalities who they'll kind of gel best with. And then this partner becomes your senior mentor. This person is now responsible for you. They're incentivized to see you grow and to see you make money. And they're your first line of defense on any calls, any meetings, any proposals that you're going on. You have a 10-year industry veteran by your side to help make sure that you win the business that you're pursuing, and of equal, if not greater importance, help you decide who you should not be spinning your wheels on. There's a lot of opportunities as a new agent when you come into the business that are shiny objects that you think, oh my God, this guy told me he's a seller, I can sell this and get a commission check. Where our experience has shown that some of these things that kind of are shiny, bright objects, they're actually lower probability. And I spoke a little bit about this, in terms of making your cold calls and the difference of being an advisor versus kind of a transactional tool. But if in your first day on the phones, you make 100 calls, one person tells you, hey, I'm definitely selling, and then the last person tells you, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, you're way more likely to make money with that second person. The person who's already decided that they're selling, who already knows what they're doing before they knew you existed, you're gonna have very little influence over that person. But the last person who almost doesn't want to take up your time because they're not sure if they're going to do anything, they know you work on commissions and they don't want to waste your time because they're not sure if they're ready yet. That's the client that you have the real opportunity to kind of build a relationship with and be seen as their advisor and kind of help them throughout the process, when they're ready. So one of the other things in this kind of mentor-mentee relationship that, we're very cognizant of is that we don't want new agents there feeling like they're here to support the senior agents. You're not here to grow their business. You're not here to be their support. You are here to build your own business, to establish your company, and the firm is here to help you, again, compress that time frame and to do it kind of at a faster rate than what it took us. And one of the last things I'll share is there's a lot of great companies out there. There's a lot of ways to make money in the commercial real estate business. But if we decide that we want to pursue being a commercial real estate broker, I'll tell you that I think there's 4 things that everyone should be looking out for that are really the keys to having a chance at being successful in the business. And the first is obvious. You need a company that's going to open the doors, give you a desk, give you the phone, and give you a shot, give you the opportunity. But more important than that, number 2, is I think you need someone with real transactional experience, someone who has done what they're asking you to do, who's also going to have time to take out of their day to teach you the business in a classroom-like setting. And then 3, what I'd say is most important, is you need to be surrounded by a team of peers that are actively succeeding in what it is you are trying to accomplish, so you learn through osmosis more than anything else, and just being around people that are getting after it every day. And then lastly, number 4, as it relates to kind of really growing your brand, building a business for the long term, is I think you want to be at a company that is also in growth mode. So no one is ever incentivized to kind of keep you at some same rung in the ladder. And us as a company are going to be ecstatic when it's time to get out of your way when you're ready to take your business to the next level. So when you're ready to focus on more asset types, when you're ready to focus on a wider territory, when you've completed 10 transactions of your own and are now ready to have a mentee kind of work under you and leverage all your experience to create more opportunities for the firm, that all these things are provided to you, so there is, really no cap on kind of where we can take something like this. So I know that was a lot to absorb. I appreciate you guys for listening into all that. I'm happy to kind of just open it up to you guys to hear any of your thoughts or, you know, any other questions you might have. Keith?
It's kind of two questions, but I'm sure you could kind of answer
Sure.
them together. Part one of the question is, you know, you said you started at Marcus and Millichap. Why did you choose, or why did you leave and why did you go to IPRG? And for students that are interested in a career in brokerage, like you mentioned, all of those
Yeah.
things to look for. Kind of like also expanding on that, like what should students look for in brokerages, and like why kind of IPRG? I'm assuming.
Yeah. So I'll answer the first part of the question, like why did I leave Marcus and Millichap? Marcus and Millichap was a great company, and when I was brand new to the business, there was no other firm out there that kind of offered the training and support for new agents. I had been at other real estate companies. They were residential, but the real difference is that there was no kind of 0 to 60 track. There were a lot of successful residential agents. There were a lot of people at that company making money. But in terms of like learning the alphabet and going from 0 to 60, there was no support at any of these other companies. Marcus and Millichap really provided that. I was there when it was a private company. It then, you know, continued to grow, became a publicly traded firm. And there was just some shift in kind of the management styles and decisions and the culture at the firm where it was clear that they were prioritizing profits over the people that were there. And then, you know, over time, just that like kind of value proposition, obviously you give a sum of your commissions, you know, to the firm. The value proposition that Marcus and Millichap was kind of hanging its hat on, just like, I didn't believe in it anymore. One of the things was, you know, hey, we have this beautiful office on Madison Avenue. That's why you should give us half of your commissions when you do a deal. This was now after COVID when I'm doing deals in my living room. And I'm like, why am I still paying these guys 50% of every check when I'm not even like using the office? And basically like the training and just the culture there, you know, started to change. I had a friend of mine who had just made partner at IPRG. So that's what really kind of shifted my head, because as you learn about real estate, you learn about equity, you learn about the importance of ownership. Here was a friend of mine, one of my peers, that, you know, we worked at a publicly traded company together. And if we wanted any shot at owning the company that we worked for, they would tell us to open up an E-Trade account and like buy a stock. Here, Zach was awarded, my friend is also named Zach, he was awarded with an equity share, equity stake and an ownership share in the company. So to me, like that set an important message that like IPRG is not just focused on like building relationships with their clients. They see the brokers that work there as kind of their main clients and made them part owners of the company to kind of build a long-term relationship with them. And it's with that kind of culture of it being a broker-owned company where we're not sending half of our commissions across the country to buoy a stock price. They're going back into the actual firm, into our CRM system, into our office in Lower Manhattan, and things that will actually help the agents there like make money. Is why like I continue to stay at IPRG and believe that it's a, you know, great fit. And so then going over to the second part of your question, the 4 kind of things I say to look out for, why I believe IPRG provides that. So we are hiring. We've gone from 35 to 50 agents in the last 18 months. And I would say 90% of those agents who have come into the firm have little to no experience in the commercial real estate world before starting with us. And they're going through the IPRG blueprint, they're doing the training sessions 12 to 18 months, and I can point to people in the office that had never done any sort of real estate deal before, and now are closing multi-million-dollar transactions within 12 to 18 months. So we are providing that opportunity. We're eager on kind of the long-term trajectory of the company and the market, and we want to be hiring people who are kind of new to the industry and kind of, you know, give them that blueprint, that foundation to build their business. The second part of that is that, you know, I've seen this in other companies, that the people who may have my role or a similar role of training people to do something. This was actually my experience in my second real estate company, where my sales manager that was, you know, telling me what to do. Hey, post this, reach out to this client, do this, do X, do Y, do Z. After I'd been there for like 9 months, I realized that this woman, this manager, had never done what they were asking me to do. They had some other position in real estate, inside sales. They never had to chase clients. So once I learned that, I'm like, you can't help me. You can't tell me what to do because you've never done this. At IPRG, me running the platform that I'm doing, like, I will never ask someone to do something that I haven't done 10 times over myself, whether that's make 400 calls or go on, 5 to 6 meetings a week, and to build like a long-term business where you're playing like a short and long game. You're very focused on like what I can accomplish this week in terms of calls, meetings, or proposals, but that knowledge that like, this isn't for this month, like this might not even be for this year, but I'm gonna continue to plant as many of these seeds as I can, and sooner or later, these things are gonna kind of come up. The third aspect of that was, surrounding yourself by a group of peers. So it's one thing to join a real estate company where everyone else has had 10 plus years in the business. It's another thing to join a real estate company with peers who are in the same boat as you, who have 0 to 1 to 2 years experience in real estate. And again, like learn through osmosis. Our office has like an open floor plan. There's no private offices. So from Derek Bestrick to Steve Reynolds, like the top partners at the firm, they're all out in the open. They're in a cube making calls, and you hear them get hung up on. Like they're still on the front lines of the business. They're hearing you, you're hearing them, and you get to really like learn from each other while actively doing the business. It's for those reasons that I'm confident that IPRG is a great group of people to surround yourself with that are in a similar boat as you. And then lastly, like being at a growing firm. I was at a team at my old firm that was just like content to keep things the way they were. I worked in multifamily in Astoria, Queens, and if I looked at other markets, other things, I was told, you know what, stay focused, this is your box. This is where I need you to contribute to the team. You're just playing this position. At IPRG, like, we want to be growing. We want to give people within the firm those opportunities to expand. One of the partners at the firm, Brian Davila, he started with the firm as kind of a junior agent, no real estate experience in Brooklyn. He was very successful in his early years, built up his book of business, was kind of afforded more opportunities in Brooklyn to work on a few of the different teams, expand his horizons. And then about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, he was afforded the opportunity to expand into the Bronx, where now he has 2 to 3 junior agents working under him, making calls, setting up meetings in the Bronx, where at other companies, at other firms, like they are not in that growth mode where they're gonna be, more content to just keep people in their boxes, where we want to kind of open those boxes up and give people more opportunities to expand their business and help the firm make more money. Any other questions? Let's go here.
Hey, speaking with Badwa, thanks for the panel.
Yeah.
The question that I really have is for like young people who just got into the industry. How do you know what you should specialize in, or how do you kind of nitpick your niche and pursue that in the market?
So it has to be something that speaks to you in a way. But I'll tell you, like when I first started in commercial real estate, I thought I was going to be working on a team that focused in Brooklyn. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn. I didn't know commercial real estate, but I figured I knew Brooklyn, so I figured I could gravitate towards this. They gave that position to someone else, and they said, Zach, you know what, you're our second choice. We'll make room for you in Queens. And then he showed me a map of Queens, and like my head started to spin. Because like coming from Brooklyn, like we don't go to Queens. Like you go to Manhattan, but like you have no reason to go to Queens. Everything that's in Queens is in Brooklyn. So I was like, what the heck is this place? But over time, like I got interested in it. I could see some of the neighborhoods there in Queens kind of reminded me of neighborhoods that I knew in Brooklyn growing up, where Brooklyn started turning into Manhattan, and these neighborhoods in Queens kind of reminded me of home. So like I was able to kind of identify with it and approach it with an open perspective and really got interested in the different neighborhoods. People ask me all the time, hey Zach, like what do I need to do to become like a top agent? Like what separates a regular agent, an average agent from, you know, a top performing agent? And I used to like shy away from the answer because it's not like the prettiest answer. But the answer is like you need to become obsessed. You need to become kind of like a crazy person where you don't want to go home at 7 o'clock at night to watch Netflix or to watch the game. You want to like research the comps in your market so you know who you can call tomorrow to give yourself a chance at, you know, a big check. So like the different areas and neighborhoods, like I sometimes say, like, yes, it should speak to you. You shouldn't hate that area because if you don't want to go there, then you're not going to be, you know, excited to be booking meetings and going there. But when people ask me like, what market should I choose? I tell them like market A versus market B, it kind of like equals out over time. What you should do is focus on the people that are on those teams. Because if it works, you know, think about the people that you have a chance to work with and like who do you want to spend 50 plus hours a week with for 50 weeks a year for the next 5 years? Because if it works, like that's the answer to your question of who you're going to be spending this time with. And I think like the difference between New Jersey, Bronx, Manhattan, like I think at the end of the day, those things kind of even themselves out. So when it comes to different opportunities that you guys will all come across in the future, I would tell you don't focus too much on the bricks, but pay more attention to the people that you'll be kind of doing it with. Yep.
So, I'm Logan, nice to meet you.
Yeah, hey Logan.
I know you said that you guys do like panels or every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for the people who don't know much.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of qualifications are there to be hired of people that are coming in and you're basically teaching them?
So the qualification, great question, is you have to be personable. You have to strike me as someone that's going to be able to pick up the phone and turn a complete stranger into a potential client in a 2 to 3 minute phone call. For me, that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for. Someone can come in with their resume and say, hey, I know how to underwrite properties, Argus, research, X, Y, and Z. I've worked for this developer, I've worked for that developer. But if they've just been like behind a computer screen and can crunch numbers, that's not gonna really do us any good as a firm. What we need is people who can get on the phone, not be afraid of rejection, have a short-term memory, call the person again next week to try to book the same meeting, and like get us in front of people. Because all the great underwriting skills that you have, if you can't turn that stranger into a potential client over the phone, you're gonna have nothing to work on. So for me, like that's what I really look on, like do you have like interpersonal skills? Can you speak to someone on the phone? Can you kind of develop some sort of like rapport building skill set is way more important than anything else that is on a resume.
And follow up with that
Yeah.
question, I'm sure some of us are wondering, what kind of internship opportunities are you guys offering?
Yeah, so we've got 2 offices. We have the new office that we recently opened up in Jersey City, and then we have our main office in the financial district in Lower Manhattan. And, you know, we have an open mind to be doing, you know, continued internships, especially in our New Jersey office. That's probably where we can use a lot of the kind of database scraping and initial research to kind of help us out. And then, you know, just surround yourself with the brokers that are making calls, attend the trainings. Those things will be afforded to anyone, you know, interested in a potential internship opportunity. So happy to speak about that.
Just one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Logan.
What kind of database are you guys using to scrape your list?
Yeah, so we have what we call the SID, a Shared Information Database. And this is one of the things that really differentiates IPRG from other firms, especially, you know, the Marcus & Millichaps, Cushman & Wakefields of the world that have a very big umbrella. They're one big company, but they have a lot of individual teams. Those individual teams are all siloed off. They're all using their own database where they're not sharing information with each other. They have their own marketing, and they really function as like independent companies, just under one large umbrella for kind of branding purposes more than anything. But at IPRG, we have a system that, again, we've used the kind of brokerage commissions to reinvest into. To date, we've spent just under $2 million on this system. And every single commercial property in New York and New Jersey is publicly recorded. It's part of public record. So we use different systems to kind of scrape that data that's publicly available. We put it into our system. So if I want to search for, a 10-unit building in Jersey City, I can kind of select that zip code, select multifamily, and say, hey, just show me buildings that are 10 units. And it'll populate a list, and you'll have the owner's names there. And then we use different kind of research systems to try to confirm, as best as we can, different names and phone numbers. So you're using a few different resources. Property Shark is one that helps us get the publicly recorded information from properties. CoStar is a great one. It's the closest thing to like an MLS for commercial real estate, where you can see competitive brokers listings, recent sales. That's one of the other resources that we're using. Any other questions?
When dealing with like younger brokers especially, like what type of advice can you give them on like dealing with rejections? Because I know if you're making like 300-400 calls a week and you only get maybe like 1 or 2 meetings, it could like take a toll on them. So what advice would you give them when they're in that situation?
Good question. It's really to have, you kind of have to trick your mind into something where like you can't expect the call to go well. You can't be sure that it's going to be bad, because then you won't pick up the phone. But if you pick up the phone with some real optimism, you're right. 350 out of 400 times, like that's going to beat you up and kind of question yourself of like, what the heck are you doing? Does this make any sense? Is this worth my time? There's this like theory that we've kind of built that you have to like have a positive sustenance, a positive kind of mind frame, while still expecting a negative result. And why you expect a negative result is not because you're not good enough, but because there's like 1,000 variables on the other end of the phone. They're not ready to sell. They have a cousin that's a broker. They've already sold. They're not picking up the phone today. They're at work. Their voicemail, like, there's way too many things on the other end that even, the best agent at our company, the best agent that they could call that person and not be successful on that call. So it's a rational kind of framework that you set up for yourself, where you're not expecting 1 out of every 5 or 10 of the calls to like go well. You're expecting them to, not go well, but you know that you need to have that like kind of positive energy and attitude when you pick it up, because if it happens to be one of the kind of 2 to 3 calls that you have a chance at closing that day, but you're a little beat up and you're a little low energy, then like you're not going to get that one. So you have to like keep a positive attitude while expecting a negative result, and realize that like at the end of one day where you made 100 calls, you should be going home like charged up about the one person who you had a good conversation with, and completely forget the other 99 people that, cursed at you and told you to get lost. With knowing that like, hey, I didn't accomplish anything today, but if I do this 5 days a week, and I do this for 50 weeks at a year, by the end of the year, I'm gonna have a pipeline really worth working on. So it's about having that like kind of longer term perspective, being rational, that every call is not gonna go my way, but if I wanna give myself the best chance at the calls I have a chance for, I have to keep this kind of positive energy.
Thank you.
How do you tailor marketing approaches for like institutional buyers versus like small business?
How do we tailor our marketing for, was that for institutional investors, or what? Can you say the question one more time?
For like small private investors versus like institutional.
Yeah. So a lot of people ask me, like, what are we doing in our underwriting and what are we doing with our marketing? And a lot of people have the idea that, it's really complicated, that you need to do like a 10-year model and underwrite what all these different things can be. In our business, that is led by private clients more so than institutional. Again, in the space that we're functioning, it's really kind of 2 to 25 million, where there are some larger institutional players that kind of play in that space. But most of the clients that we're kind of reaching out and doing business with are private family offices and kind of mom and pop investors. So what we're doing is like really keeping it simple and relatable to them. They know what a rent roll looks like. They know what an expense sheet looks like. And that's the majority of kind of what's in, some of our, books, and I'll share some of that stuff with you guys later. But it's keeping it simple, keeping it clean, trying to present the property in a way that's relatable to the owner, where they can see, hey, this is 8 units and it's making, $16,000 a month. My building is making $20,000 a month. So if this person's asking $2 million for their building, my building must be worth a little bit more. And just trying to kind of make it relatable and easily digestible for, the mom and pop clients that we're focusing on.
So I think that like a lot of this conversation and a lot of times when we have brokers come in, we kind of talk about the same thing about like how hard it is to get into the business because you are kind of like relying on yourself a lot, and since it is commission based and everything. So I think a lot of people might be wondering like how like your goals in the first couple years are it's like tough, like just trying to make like a couple thousand profit at first. So how do your goals kind of shift as you like get past that point and you become more successful? And is there like, kind of like a high reward to the risk of like starting up and everything?
Yeah, so again, you're trying to really build a sustainable long-term business. And the first 1 to 2 years, what I'll call kind of the ramp-up period, I tell people, hey, before we do this together, before we make this commitment, we should be fiscally and mentally prepared to go somewhere between 12 to 18 months before making a commission check. And, here we are at Rutgers University. A lot of people may have scholarship opportunities, but in many ways, like this was an investment that you made in yourself. And starting a commercial real estate brokerage business should be seen in exactly the same way, where you actually have an opportunity to make money while you're doing it, but that you're fully immersing yourself into a new industry and really getting to learn about the business. And I'll also tell people that like not everybody is going to be the next like millionaire real estate broker, but by starting this business 1 or 2 years after school, you're going to like pick up a commercial real estate vocabulary. You're going to build cold calling skills, business development, analytical skills that, if you don't have some other job that's like begging you to work there for $100,000 a year, starting in commercial real estate can make you a very qualified candidate down the road, even if you don't land a bunch of deals in your first 1 to 2 years. So that would be just some of the mindset that I would have kind of approaching the business. But to the second part of your question, like what are your goals and how can you kind of scale this business? It's the 50 proposals that you do in that first year, knowing that maybe 1 or 2 of them are going to pop or kind of come to fruition that year. But then by year 2, you have 100 seeds of these planted. And then by year 3, you have 150 seeds in the market, and your sales acumen, your business development, relationship skills have all grown, exponentially. I think back, to some of the newer agents that like are they want to get good at it fast. They want to get good at making cold calls. And I think back to this analogy I heard where a professor had 2 different classes. He was teaching pottery. And one of the classes, he said, hey, this class, I want you guys to be the expert class. You guys have all been hand selected to be experts at making vases. You guys have all semester to make the 5 most beautiful vases you can. Spend all your time making these vases perfect. And then he had another class that he said, listen, you guys aren't anything special. I need you to do like a high volume of these vases. I need you guys each to make 5,000 vases by the end of the semester. And by the end of the semester, the class that did the high volume, the 4,995th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 5,000th vases, were way better than the people who spent all year making those vases. So I think as we grow up, our parents, our teachers are all telling us quantity or quality over quantity. But in this business, you really need to do the quantity of it to kind of develop that skill set that can improve your quality. So when agents are coming in their first 1 to 2 years, and they're asking me, how do I get better at making cold calls? I'm saying, make 10,000 of them. Make 10,000 calls, and then come back to me and we can have this conversation a little bit more enlightened. So your skill set is improving, your seeds are being planted, and that is what allows a 2 to 3x jump year over year, where the senior agents at the firm, they're making multiples of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Derek Bestrick, he's the founder of the firm. He's been in the business since 2008. Derek makes $1 million a year as a broker. Another kind of element to this, and a reason why people pursue commercial real estate, is they see it as a means to an end. They want to be an investor one day. And to be in this business, to learn the ins and outs from all these different perspectives, to accumulate some capital, build relationships. A few years down the road, now you're in a position to be an investor yourself. And between the partners, they own about 8 to 10 buildings together. So there is no kind of ceiling on where this opportunity can take you. The tricky part is that the opposite is also true in the beginning and kind of breaking through, that point. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Going off of her, I know she mentioned about how you guys work with private investors and focus more on the mom and pop shops. We really wanted to know what is IPRG's long-term growth perspective, and do you guys have a vision that you want to go towards the institutional route, or do you guys really want to stay in the middle market area long-term?
That's a great question, and I think part of the benefit of us of being a small privately held company is that's still up in the air, and exactly which way we'll gravitate and which way we'll grow. A lot of us, again, came from Marcus & Millichap. Marcus & Millichap is now a publicly traded company. They have 80 offices throughout the country. I don't think we want to open up an office in Shreveport, Louisiana. We're not that interested in the kind of secondary and tertiary markets. But if we can continue kind of our efforts and our expansions in the Northeast, we'll probably stay in that kind of $2 to $25 million sweet spot in these surrounding areas. But I do think that there's a tremendous opportunity to start climbing into the institutional business in our kind of backyard of New York and New Jersey, where, I would say especially New Jersey versus New York, is that there's not as many kind of sophisticated brokerage groups that are kind of going after these kind of opportunities, where, we're not afraid to compete with those guys. So we'll see exactly how the firm grows, but I would say, thinking geographically, we're gonna stay kind of in the Northeast and then probably down to Florida next, as there's a lot of kind of crossover with capital between the owners in these areas. And then, as we kind of really establish our footprint here, we can kind of scale up. That's kind of how we're looking at it today. Logan?
Are outbound calls the only form of marketing you guys do?
Our outbound call is the only form of marketing we do. No. But as a brand new agent, those are your only responsibilities as you kind of coming into the firm. But we use our kind of Salesforce system where people are making calls and you have a conversation with someone and they say, I'm not interested in selling today. And then you say, hey, I have this mailing address, 123 Main Street. Is this correct? And they're like, yeah, okay. So this person will get a postcard. This person will get 1 or 2 of our mailers from time to time. Social media, online presence, it yields some results, but kind of snail mail, as we'll call it, especially with the kind of target audience of private family investors that are, 50 to 75 years old, a letter has a really long shelf life where even our parents that are in our 60s or 70s, like, they get 200 emails a day. So a lot of times, like, we want to send an email to a client, we want to send a text to a client, so we get that like instant gratification that I communicated this to them, but like they've forgotten about it by the next day that they wake up. Where if you can show the client that you're thinking of them by signing your name at the end of the letter, folding it up, putting an envelope, putting the stamp in the right place, and like sending it to them, it's gonna sit on their desk like until they've decided to do something. And I can't tell you how many times like I've met with some older mom and pop client that like has never really engaged with us over the phone, but we meet with them and they like take out a folder of like every single postcard anyone has ever sent them. So a lot of postcards, snail mail marketing is probably our most kind of effective ROI aside from the cold call. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you keep maintain a work-life balance, and how do you find a motivation to wake up every day and do the work that you do?
Great question. I'm glad you asked it. The question was like, how do you maintain a work-life balance and kind of stay motivated to come to work kind of every day? And there's like a little joke or saying that we have that, hey, the commercial real estate business is a great business. You only have to work half a day. The only thing is that you have to decide which 12 hours of the day you want to work. And that's just what it is. And like the idea of a work-life balance for us, it's not splitting up my week or splitting up my days where I have work and life and I get to go home and I get to relax. It's no, for these 5, 6, 10 years, I'm gonna work my ass off. So when I'm 40, I can have an investment property and I can enjoy my life then. The work-life balance in this business early on, like it doesn't really exist in that kind of 9 to 5 mentality. And that's when you have to decide like what's really important to you. Where do you really want to go in the future? And if hanging out with your friends and like watching Netflix and like going to the game, if like that's really important to you, then we shouldn't trick ourselves into pursuing an opportunity like this, thinking that it's going to work for us and this is what we want to do. It's a very competitive space. And if you're not putting in a minimum of like 55 to 60 hours a week, someone else is, and they're going to take your lunch.
So let's say you meet with a client. It's like a 2 out of the 50 calls you have.
Yeah.
And you feel like you have a productive call. You might gain a client who you are becoming an advisor to.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in the time between becoming their advisor and them coming to you, or you eventually coming to them, and then deciding to make a sale? How do you maintain a relationship instead of just creating a new one?
No, it's a great question, and it's something that people, struggle with from time to time. Is like, how do I validate a reason to call this person again? I spoke to them last month. They said that they're thinking about it. But what does that mean? Like, when should I call them again? And really, for people that we've kind of identified as separating themselves from the rest of the pack that like are definitely not doing something, I want to touch base with these people like once every 30 to 45 days max. And how do I do that without sounding like the annoying broker? It's like, hey, you said that you might be thinking about selling. Like, has anything changed yet? Are you ready to sell yet? Like, that is going to be the quickest way for you to kind of get light switched and be seen as desperate and annoying and like, I don't want to work with that agent. So what you have to do is like really approach yourself or approach the calls as that I'm constantly just providing updates. Like kind of the first question about providing value and kind of triggering reciprocity, is like, I'm not calling them to like check in and see if anything has changed on their end. I'm finding something in the market that has changed within the last 30 to 45 days and calling them to say, hey, this building 2 blocks away from you just sold, and I thought of you when I saw this information. So I'm just calling to provide you an update. Hey, the last building sold at $200 a foot. Here's some really encouraging signs that this one just sold for $250 a foot. And you're trying to find like relevant information out there that hasn't hit their inbox in some other way, and be the person that's like breaking the news to them. Because like, when you're the one who breaks the news to someone and then they hear or see it somewhere else, maybe they're talking with some of their landlord buddies, like you're going to like make them feel smarter by having shared that information. And they could say, yeah, my broker told me about this, and then like you're further just like planting yourself in their mind as being their advisor, front of mind. And you do that just by like staying focused just in your one market, where anything that can happen, when it happens, you're aware of it first, and you beat all the other brokers you're competing to the punch by calling that owner and kind of providing that update. And like, I was on the phone with someone today that I met 12 years ago. Still not ready to sell. But still touch base with him every, maybe not every month, this guy, because I realized he's kicking the can down the road and wasn't that serious initially. But like, what is something new that I can share with him to, provide an update? And, I'll probably share 2 kind of deal stories, but one of them was a client that in my CRM system, when I first started calling, it said, the previous person who had called this person said that this family has like a 5-year plan. I called them, I left a message. There was no outgoing message. I had no idea that this was the right person. But I just made a note in my system that this person, compared to the other 3,000 contacts, was like thinking about doing something. So I left this person a voicemail once a month for an entire year, having never spoken to them. But every time I called them, I told them over the voicemail about some other property that was just listed or just sold. I never actually shared any of the financials on it, because that's kind of the hook or bait that I'm leaving for the client to call me back to find out what this sold for. But I would share, hey, an 8-family building in Astoria just sold. We just listed a 10-unit building in Long Island City. And I would just share this information with them once a month. Then one day I'm sitting at my desk and I get an inbound call, and it see the name on the caller ID. I'm like, I know that name before, but I can't put a face to the name. Like, I don't know who this person is. Person picks up the phone and is like, Zach, like, how are you? I'm like, who the hell is this person? And they're like, this is George. You guys have been leaving us voicemails. Thank you so much for keeping us updated in the market and what was going on in our neighborhood. We've decided that it's time for us to sell, and persistence pays off. And as soon as I heard him say that, like, I knew that was a check I made. And for that one client, again, splitting it with my team and my firm, that was a $35,000 check for like leaving voicemails. And I'll continue to leave voicemails for the rest of my career, because whether or not people are giving you that signal now, they appreciate it, they remember you, they see you as that advisor, that you're not calling them, hey, I'm seeing if you're ready to sell, but just providing updates. You're the expert, and you can, build some trust there. One last story I'll share with you guys. It was of kind of my biggest sale that I was able to, handle, in my time as a broker in Queens. And I reached some owner. His name was Al. And this guy, for lack of a better term, he was like a ball buster over the phone. He was just kind of like razzing me on the phone. He could tell I was young, 21, 22 years old. And he's like, hey, Zach, like, how old are you? I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? He's like, tell me, how old are you? And I'm like, 22, 23 years old. And he's like, well, Zach, I've owned my building longer than you've been alive. So what the hell are you going to tell me? And I froze, and I'm like, listen, I can't tell you how to manage the building. I can't tell you how to deal with tenants. But what I can tell you is the average price per square foot and how many times the income the last 5 similar buildings in Astoria to sell. And he's like, you know what? Like, I appreciate that. But you know what, Zach? I'll tell you something. I'm selling my building without a broker. Who's better than me? I'm saving on a commission. I found a direct buyer that's selling the building, that I'm selling the building directly to. And like, thank you, you sound nice, but like, I don't need you. And I knew in my mind, at first I was like, shit, like I'm late to the table here. I wish instead of the last 2 to 3 weeks making 300 calls that I made 400 calls and I would have reached this person kind of in my cycle a little bit sooner. That was the first thing that I said. And then I said, you know what? Let me at least try to extract some information from this person. I might not do the deal. I might not get the sale. I might not get the meeting. But let me find out about this real-time transaction that's happening in my market that nobody else knows about. And I can use that information to hopefully book some more meetings. And I also knew that if I told this client, you shouldn't do that. You should hire me. You should hire a broker. We're going to get you more money. He would have been like, yeah, all right, click. That's how it would have went. So I said, Al, congratulations. That's amazing. Pumped him up a little bit and said, you know, hey, what are you selling the building for? And he goes, $9 million. And I'm like, wow, Al, $9 million? Like, who's better than you? That's amazing. By the way, what's the income on the building? And he's like, 600,000. Take out my calculator. I'm like, Al, like, that's 15 times the earnings. He's like, yeah, what about it? 15 times. I say, well, 3015 49th Street, 2811 33rd Street, this other building on Broadway, like these 3 buildings just sold at 18 times the income. And then like the call goes silent. And I'm like, Al, like, are you still there? And he's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm just thinking. The contract is waiting for me in my attorney's office. The deposit's there. The deal is done. I just haven't signed the contract and I haven't put the check in the bank. I'm supposed to go do that next week. But hey, I tell you what, I'm at the building right now. When can you meet with me? And again, my first 2 years of the business, I was chasing people left and right that had wanted nothing to do with me, did not want to work with me. And then here I am, specialized in one space where the client is asking me to meet with him. So I say, you know what? I'll close up my desk. I've got nothing else to do today. And I headed out to Astoria that afternoon. I met with him. And because I was, again, specialized in this one submarket, all these comps, all this data I had at the tip of my tongue. No one else found this information useful. If I tried to bring it up at dinner, like my parents would look at me like, what, I don't care about this. But this guy, like, cared about it. I was able to really establish some credibility and trust him, or have him trust me to kind of share with me the rent roll and expenses of his building. And then again, because I'm specialized in this one area, I had a marketing team that was just focused on getting my books and presentations together. I was able to get back in front of this client within 24 hours and quantitatively show him that he was leaving a substantial amount of money on the table. We listed the building for $11 million, and within 3 weeks, we had 3 full price offers at $11 million. And from the day I met him to the day we closed, it was 99 days, and I ripped a $50,000 check net to myself. And after that, like, that deal helped me get 2 other deals. And the person who bought this deal listed 3 other properties with me. And it really like made my career, that one sale, that one client that like was pushing back at me. And I didn't like do anything magical other than just like share the right information with the right person at the right time to have that kind of opportunity. So that is at the end of the day what you're all trying to do, is become like a specialist in some area where, again, someone's gonna have owned the building longer than you've been alive, and you need to prove to them like what value you can add. All right, guys, any other questions? I had it in mind to like go over some information about like interest rates and how that's kind of affecting the market. I won't go too deep into that, but basically, you know, interest rates in 2020 during COVID, economy was kind of frozen, so they brought interest rates down to 0. So wealthy people who had multiple options of where to invest their money, keeping the money in the bank, putting it in a CD, investing in treasuries were yielding them essentially no return. So that fueled a big appetite for investment in commercial real estate. They've always said that when interest rates go down, commercial real estate goes up, and when interest rates go up, commercial real estate goes down, the values go down. So, you know, it was during COVID, it was during like a difficult time logistically or whatever to show buildings, but the underwriting and the interest rates people were getting to borrow to buy these buildings was very aggressive. So, you know, in 2021 and 2022, our firm sold, I believe, like 68 or 72 investment properties in that year. And then 2023, when interest rates went up, we went down to selling only 58 properties that year. In 2024, while interest rates were still a thing, but the firm was able to grow, we sold 78 buildings last year. And now this year we're on track to sell 100 buildings. But when interest rates started to go up, I would call people and say, hey, I have got this building for sale and it's asking a 5% cap, 5% rate of return. In years prior, during COVID and, you know, maybe slightly before that, these 5% cap rates is where the deals were like actually selling. So now I have a property listed at the price that these other buildings were selling, where usually it would be a little bit more aggressive. And I would call people and be like, hey, I've got a building for a 5 cap. Like, why don't you want to buy this? It's great. The prices are down from before. And they're like, Zach, I can get a 5% return with my money sitting in the bank with no headaches, no risk, full liquidity, and I don't have headaches, I don't have phone calls in the middle of the night. Why am I going to buy this building at a 5% return when I can get that return now? So this is why in today's market we're seeing buildings trade anywhere between like a 6 and a 7% return, because investors kind of need that spread based on kind of where the treasuries are. So everybody's hope in the commercial real estate market, you know, today are that interest rates are going to come back down. And while we've seen like a slight decrease in the federal funds rate in the last 12 months, it hasn't mirrored what it was on the front side of these like 75 basis point hikes where the market like really kind of ran away from us. So right now we're in a stable part of the market where people can predict what interest rates are going to be for the next, you know, call it 6 to 12 months. And that is allowing people to kind of put pencil to paper, underwrite buildings, and velocities back up. So like the values are down compared to where they were in 2021, 2022. But like the mystery about what's happening and what's going to happen next is kind of over. And why we're very bullish on kind of where we think the market's going to go over the next 2 to 3 years. So in terms of like being able to time a market that would be great to kind of jump into, this is definitely one of those times where there's a lot of pent up demand and a little bit more of kind of a steady forecast ahead of us, where the numbers that you tell your client today are going to probably be relatively true in, you know, the next couple of months. Where when I first started in the business and the market was going up, a lot of the deals that I didn't end up doing were because I told the client what it was worth today, and then 4 or 5 months later, they got a direct offer for the number that I told them, and they get to cut out the broker, so they just went and did the deal. So kind of all the different kind of forecasting metrics that like we see in the market today are to kind of really set up a bull run for brokerage companies, you know, like us, and why we're excited to be kind of meeting with people here today and kind of introducing the firm and, you know, introducing the business. So again, I thank you guys for taking the time to be with me here tonight, and look forward to continuing the conversation with you guys. Thanks again.
Thank you guys very much. Zach, if they want to reach out to you, Coach.
Yeah, so, you know, IPRG, I guess the screen went black, but I've got my business card here, and, you know, IPRG.com, my information is on there. So happy to meet with anyone if anyone's interested in talking more about a potential internship or just any other questions. I'll be here to hang around for at least another 10 minutes or so. Thanks, guys.
You
Nice name, by the way.
Eamon?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
I'm fascinated by you guys, like, investment in time for like, the younger.
Sounds like a market trend to me.
I mean, I understand the